Hey folks, Kenn Rashad, HBCU Sports. We are back for another season of college football, HBCU football in particular. And as we prepare for the start of the season, I'm joined by Kendrick Marshall, HBCU Sports senior editor, and our newcomer to the staff, Jarrett Hoffman, who is our D2 expert. The brother knows some Division two football. Nevertheless, I'm here in Atlanta with Jarrett Hoffman. Kendrick, for whatever reason, was too busy to join us in Atlanta, but he'll be covering more games during the course of the season. But you would think that with the MEAC SWAC Challenge being front and center and being the pretty much the premier game of this weekend, with FAMU also on the slate to play North Carolina, you would think that the MEAC SWAC Challenge would be the primary game, but as it turns out, the Rattlers some way somehow found a way to snatch the headlines just before the start of the kickoff. Just before kickoff. Kendrick, inform us exactly what we learned with respect to the FAMU situation and addressing the issue of players who are likely going to be ineligible for at least this game and even part of the season.
Yeah, so yesterday was pretty wild. I mean, like around 1 o'clock Eastern time, we saw or we heard some rumors that the game that's going to be played tonight between FAMU and North Carolina might not be played because the players refused to play. I'm like, uh-oh, are we having another grounding situation again? And then like you read a little bit more and you find out the Rattler Nation blog, they reported on Twitter that there were some compliance issues involving the football team and that the game against the Tar Heels may or may not be played. And then later on, throughout the course of the afternoon, Willie Simmons speaks and he says there are some compliance issues and 20 players, including Isaiah Land, the reigning Buck Buchanan Award winner from last season, is not going to play Saturday night against the Tar Heels. And so we find out why that is. And there's a host of compliance issues involving progress toward graduation for some players, APRs involved in some situations. And so throughout the course of the afternoon, like we don't know whether this game can be played. Like the team is still in Tallahassee waiting to board a bus to go to the airport. And so at one point, the players really did refuse to play because their teammates who they relied on all fall and all camp to bond with, they weren't going to make the trip. And it was at one point said by Simmons that it might not be safe for them to play because they only had 7 eligible offensive linemen. And when you're playing against a Power Five team, you need all the help you can get. And so the team only having to deploy 7 offensive linemen really put them in a tough situation. Trying to break in a new quarterback,
Yeah.
and you're already playing against a team where you're going to be outmanned anyway. And so to be further have your roster decimated did not do them any favors. So it was reported the players discussed the issues with the university. They had a little prayer meeting, and all of a sudden they decided to go ahead and play the game. But that isn't the story. The story is how they even got to the situation to begin with, and that involves compliance issues with the team and the handling of compliance issues by the school, which we found out that on Thursday at some point the school was notified by NCAA that 26 players were ineligible to play Saturday.
26 players. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so between Thursday and Friday afternoon, they were able to get 6 players cleared, but obviously not all 26.
Right.
And so the players expressed frustration over handling that, and so did Willie Simmons. And so we're here today with a football game that wasn't supposed to be national news for any reason at all.
Right.
It turns out to be that way today.
Right. Right. We'll delve deeper into the situation with respect to ineligible players and the impact that that's going to have on the program during the course of the season. But Jared, I do want to talk to you. One of the key players who won't be playing today, and possibly not for the next few weeks, is Isaiah Land. Talk about the impact of how critical him not playing in this game of all games is to that team.
Well, you already said, the reigning Buck Buchanan Award winner. This is a guy that in the offseason actually entered the transfer portal and received a number of, FBS offers from top FBS programs and actually decided to return to Florida A&M for his final season. This is a guy that was is surely going to get looks from NFL teams, is almost certainly going to get an NFL draft, a combine invite. This is a guy that has the eyes of the world on him. This is the one of the most dominant defensive players in the SWAC last season.
Mm-hmm.
He was a part of that FAMU defense that got them to the FCS playoffs. This is a team that's favored to be one of the top teams in the SWAC East, playing against Jackson State next week in the Orange Blossom Classic. This Isaiah Land, if they're not able to get him eligible anytime soon, it's going to hurt not just Isaiah Land himself, but Florida A&M as a team. This is a huge tough break for this program.
Yeah, it's just a whirlwind of questions that immediately come to mind. We've already kind of touched on a couple of things. Obviously, there's the impact to Isaiah Lynn and the fact that he won't be able to play, and the impact that might have on him during the course of the season and his draft prospects. And then, of course, there are questions that have been circulating about how is it that here we are either a week before the game or even a day when we're finally finding out about over 26 ineligible players a day before the game. And even if for whatever reason people kind of knew about this maybe say a week ago or even a couple of weeks ago, the questions that immediately come to mind is how did we get to this point, and how is it that no one knew about this before now? Okay. And then you look at the statement that came from FAMU's president, Larry Robinson, and of course he indicated that the school will lead the way in addressing the football team's concerns. But I guess the one telling point about all of this that came to light is the fact that FAMU only has one full-time compliance person for the entire program. And you can say what you will about the so-called HBCU problems that we tend to have from school to school. When you think about a program of FAMU, you would automatically just think that issues like this wouldn't exist there. Your thoughts, Kendrick?
Yeah, I mean, like FAMU situation with the compliance is kind of like indicates a deeper issue with the university itself. You had Larry Robinson, the school's president, come out and say in a statement this morning that they're going to take these concerns from the players seriously. They're going to form a committee to look into this issue involving the university and some staff members. But this should have been done months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no excuse for your football team to not know who's going to play a week before the game after coming off the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these kids report in the summertime.
Right.
They obviously got to be cleared.
Right.
So there's several weeks before you have to get ready for the season to know whether or not the guys on your team can play during the year. And it's inexcusable for this to happen in the 11th hour when you're getting ready to board a plane and go to play your first game of the season. I know Jarrett has some pretty strong comments about it last night in our pre-show meeting about how you felt about it. So I'll let Jarrett take it away from here.
Have at it, Jarrett, because the
only thing you can say is I'm just disappointed. You're just disappointed. The HBCU football, we're starting to build. We're building. We have Jackson State with Coach Prime. You have Grambling State with Hugh Jackson. You got Tennessee State with Eddie George. We have four HBCU players drafted in this year's draft, 2 in the 4th round. And we have more guys who went undrafted. We're with the Jacksonville Jaguars now. We're starting to build something. We're getting more eyes on us. We can't have these kind of mental mistakes. When we talk about advocating for HBCUs, one thing that we got to do is that we have to hold each other accountable. We can't just praise you whenever you do something right, we have to hold you accountable when you are doing something wrong. And we obviously we don't know the full details about everything, so we can't be too overly critical because we don't know the true specifics behind the situation. But we know that this, I'm pretty sure it was preventable. I'm pretty sure this was preventable. And if it wasn't preventable, then it's something that they should have known a long time ago.
Yeah.
And
I think about with all of the problems surrounding this particular situation before we started recording. We talked about we talked about Coach Willie Simmons and how I personally I feel sorry for Coach Simmons because I've always been a believer that if you're going to hold a coach responsible for wins and losses, if you're going to hold a coach, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, whatever, if you're going to hold a coach responsible for wins and losses, at the very least, you need to give that coach, him or her, the very minimum they need to succeed. And when you put in this particular situation, again, FAMU only one full-time compliance person, and you're just finding out a day, or at least it's getting out to the public a day before a season opener at University of North Carolina, that you're going to have 26 ineligible players. That's just unheard of. And so I guess the only thing I can say for those Rattler diehards who will be monitoring this team during the course of the season, if for whatever reason things don't necessarily go the way you expect them to go, I don't know if you can necessarily put this on Willie Simmons. Because again, if it's only so much that you can blame a football coach for, obviously he mentioned earlier that, student athletes have a responsibility. Obviously they have to take care of business in the classroom, but at the same time, even student athletes need the necessary support that they need to succeed. And so when you've got individuals, you got obviously the head coach has a role, student athletes have a role, but then you have administrators within the athletic department. They have a role to play too. And when you get to this point and someone has, the way I see it, Coach Simmons did what he was supposed to do. I'm guessing, like Jarrett said, we don't have all the details. I don't know if this is players not necessarily getting the job done in the class, or if this is just administrative paperwork. But the bottom line is that something is broken in the process, and someone or something or the process is apparently didn't work. So I guess what can we realistically expect in this game between FAMU and North Carolina now that FAMU has decided that they are indeed going to play? What can we expect? I'll start with you, Jarrett.
Well, we still have a quarterback battle that we still need to figure out with FAMU. They announced that they are starting the transfer from Vanderbilt in favor of Rashawn McKay, who was returning for his senior season. They still have a wealth of transfer running backs. They brought a couple of transfers at the running back spot to make up for some losses that they had in the off season. They still have BJ Bowler on the defensive end, who is also a guy that will be getting looks from the pros. But in all actuality, we just need to say a prayer for these players, because this is something that they should not have to go through. This is something that they should not have to, to deal with. This game, the game of football is dangerous with 53 men on the sideline.
Right.
When you have 20 plus ineligible players that you can't account for.
And they say like 7 offensive linemen is what they've got.
Having 7 that, you got to understand how dangerous that is.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
crazy.
we really need to worry less about the result of this game and worry more about the health of our players, because that's more important than anything in this moment.
Kendrick, let me ask you: Is this? I mean, with this being week 0, and more games on the slate next weekend. Is this the last of the story? I mean, is this something that's evolving? I mean, you and I think all of you probably received an email, of regarding all kinds of stuff that really hadn't been confirmed, but there was quite a bit of detail, and all indications and all indicators indicate that for whatever reason, this may not be the last of this story. Might there be more to come, Kendrick?
I think so. I mean, like Jared said, the game is secondary to what's been transpiring over the last 36 hours or so. Yeah, there's going to be more to the story for sure. We're going to find out how this happened and why it happened, who's responsible for it. But what I did not like today and what I did not like yesterday, some of the statements that were made by Willie Simmons and Larry Robinson and some of the FAMU stakeholders who were saying they were proud of the players for having the courage to play North Carolina despite the circumstances. And I'm thinking, like, these players aren't overcoming something that was not in their control. These players are overcoming their own school, and that's a bad position to put yourself in.
Great point.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not like Jackson State a few years ago, their team baseball bus literally caught fire on the way to a baseball game.
Right.
That's something to overcome.
Right.
Like, when your school fails you in the way in which FAMU failed these football players, that's not something to celebrate if you're an administrator of the school. That's not something to be proud of. It used to be like, hey, it's our fault. We put these athletes in a terrible position and that we apologize for it and it'll never happen again. You don't praise them for, like, literally risking their necks today to go play a Power 5 school shorthanded. And so that's something that I didn't really like when I saw that this morning from some of the statements that were going around regarding this football game.
Right. Speaking of MEAC SWAC Challenge, there is another game on the slate, on the HBCU football slate, and that again, the MEAC SWAC Challenge involving Howard of the MEAC and Alabama State, the SWAC representative. Jarrett, what are your initial thoughts about the game between Alabama State and Howard, which is slated for a 7 p.m. start on ESPN, nationally televised?
Well, this is a roster of these are two rosters of teams that have a lot of talent. They're just working on how to put it together. You know, on Alabama State side, on defense, they have a lot of talent, especially in their secondary. They have Rashad Davis, they have Keenan Isaac, they have Jake Howard at linebacker, guys who fill the stat sheet. You know, Rashad Davis had 3 interceptions, 65 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 6 pass deflections last year. Keenan Isaac had 33 tackles and 7 passes defended. God, they just have a eye for the ball, you know. And on offense, they have a couple of transfers coming in, and Demetrius Davis from Auburn. They have Jalen Lay, a tight end from Clemson. You know, this team has a lot of talent, you know. And then Eddie Robinson's first season as the head coach of the team, you know, it's all about just building from this point. And Howard is another team with a lot of talent. Well, especially on the offensive end. They have Quentin Williams at quarterback. They have Ian Wheeler and Jarrett Hunter. Not Jarrett me. He's 1 R. I'm 2 R. But they have 2 great receivers in Casey Hawthorne and Antoine Murray. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I couldn't get that out. Yeah. And on the defensive end, they have a very good defensive lineman in Darren Brokenberg. You know, so these are teams with a lot of talent. It's just about being able to put it together. You know, going into it, you think that Alabama State was the favorite, but we all remember last year.
Right.
Alcorn was North Carolina Central off the water, and all of a sudden. Yeah. So
right. Yeah, I was just going to make that point, Kendrick. This is if history is any indication of who could potentially win this game, whether it be the MEAC SWAC Challenge, whether it be the Celebration Bowl, in the rare instances where a MEAC team and a SWAC team compete, it's been a blessing for MEAC schools, especially as it relates to the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Now, granted, we talked about this yesterday, and there were a couple of games in which SWAC teams actually won. With Alabama A&M and South Carolina State, Mississippi Valley, was it Valley and North Carolina Central, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there were a couple of games, but for whatever reason, as we stated, when the national spotlight, when those spotlights come on and the game is televised on the national, is nationally televised for whatever reason. The MEAC teams always seem to shine. Kendrick, is there any reason to think, and like Jarrett said, if you just look at this on paper, you would automatically assume that Alabama State would go into this game as the favorite. But what are your thoughts about what we could potentially see at the conclusion of this game this evening?
I mean, like you guys said, like you don't know the outcome. I mean, like since the advent of the Celebration Bowl, along with the MEAC SWAC Challenge, the MEAC is like 16-5 against the SWAC in these games. And I think a lot of it has to do with like the offensive line. I know Jarrett kind of rattled off some names on Howard's defensive front and the offensive front who are really, really good. And that's been a difference. And you saw last year in the Celebration Bowl where South Carolina State dominated the line of scrimmage against Jackson State. That's why they won the game. And you go back to the MEAC SWAC Challenge last year, North Carolina Central dominated the line of scrimmage. And so that's been the formula for success for the MEAC in these games. Like the SWAC, they like to throw the ball around, have a lot of high-scoring games. But the MEAC teams have been really, really physical in these games. And if Howard can be physical in this game, they're going to beat Alabama State. And so, I mean, the Hornets are the favorites because they have maybe a talent advantage. But, like, MEAC teams, they play dirty football. Not dirty illegal football, but they like to grind you out. They like to get physical with you. And so if they make that type of game, they're going to be in a possible chance to win it.
Yeah, but like I said, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But, Jared, going back to your point with some of the players that you mentioned and the recruiting that was done during the offseason, how will these players, especially with Howard, who, took their lumps during the course of the season, how do you think the talent improvement will translate during the course of the rest of the season for this team? Might Howard find themselves? I don't want to necessarily go out of the way and say that they would be an actual contender, but I mean, given the depth and the conference isn't as much as it isn't as wide as it previously have been with since FAMU and Bethune-Cookman have left and so forth. So there are only 6 football playing teams there. Might Howard find themselves in a different situation to where they could possibly be a contender to compete for a conference title?
Well, absolutely. This is a team with, like I said, with a lot of talent on offense. I think the only thing that they need right now is chemistry. They need to learn to play together and win together. The backs that I'm talked about, Jarrett Hunter and Ian Wheeler, those guys, they are the keys to success for me, especially Ian Wheeler. Ian Wheeler is a guy who can do it out in the backfield and can do it on special teams. Don't be surprised if you see him take one home on a kickoff return.
Yeah.
Because he is a threat. And
we saw that last year. Yeah.
Right, with Brandon Codrington.
Right.
Yeah. So if this offense is able to, build that chemistry, get their timing together, and the defense, they may not have as many talented players as other MEAC teams like South Carolina State does, but they have some solid names. Kenny Gallup is on that team, who I forgot to mention, Darren Brokenberg, like I said, so it's all about building chemistry. This is a transitional period for the MEAC, but they have not slowed down at all when it comes to producing and putting up wins. So I just think it's a matter of time that in terms of chemistry.
Kendrick, Eddie Robinson Jr. is making his coaching debut. And just for everyone out there, Eddie Robinson Jr. is no relation to the late, great Eddie Robinson at Grambling. But he is an Alabama State alum. And he played in the NFL, I believe, 11 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. Kendrick, Coach Robinson was, I believe, in corporate America I think he was involved in real estate before he became head coach at Alabama State. What realistically should Hornet fans expect from this team, from this coach, and what might the realistic expectations be for the course of the season for the Hornets?
I mean, if you look at it right now, based on the situation at FAMU, they could be the second best team in the SWAC East. Um, just the composition in their roster, like Jerry said, they got a lot of talent on their roster. I know Eddie Robinson Jr. is his first year head coach, but he does have like NFL playing experience, which counts for something. Um, all it takes now is for the team to kind of gather some cohesiveness. They have a quarterback that they really are excited about, transfer from Auburn, that they really could make some waves if he's able to play up to his capability. I think Alabama State this first year is going to be a struggle at times, but at the end of the season they could be competing for second place or even third place in the SWAC East. That's not unrealistic for them. I think maybe they're probably like a year away from legitimately competing for like the SWAC East title if they continue to have success on the recruiting trail they did this past offseason with Eddie Robinson Jr. So the future is unknown for now, but they're actually building towards something, which you would like to see programs do.
Right. So that is the MEAC SWAC Challenge later on this evening on ESPN. Howard versus Alabama State. Continue to follow us on the social media platforms as HBCU Sports will provide additional coverage on the MEAC SWAC Challenge, and we will also keep you updated on the events surrounding the Florida A&M football team. Jarrett Hoffman, Kendrick Marshall, thank you, brothers, for taking a moment to meet with me and to talk to everyone about this weekend's slate of games. I'm Kenn Rashad, folks. We'll see you next time.